A critique of Ibrahim Traoré's military rule compared to African democratic governments. Ibrahim Traoré, the military leader of Burkina Faso, took power in September 2022 following a coup that ousted Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. His leadership has sparked debate on the effectiveness of military rule in Africa, especially compared to democratic governments across the continent. While military regimes are often criticized for authoritarianism, Traoré's rule presents certain advantages over some democratic governments in Africa. One of the key justifications for military takeovers in Africa is the failure of democratic governments to address security concerns. Before Traoré's takeover, Burkina Faso faced increasing terrorist attacks from Islamist militants. Under his rule, there has been a noticeable shift in military strategy, with more aggressive offensives against insurgents. His government has mobilized thousands of civilian volunteers to support the army, strengthened military alliances with countries like Mali, and cut ties with former colonial power France, which was seen as ineffective in combating terrorism. In contrast, many democratic governments in Africa struggle with slow bureaucracies and political infighting, which hinder rapid decision-making on security matters. For instance, Nigeria and Kenya, despite having elected governments, still struggle with insurgencies due to corruption, lack of political will, and inefficiencies in security agencies. Democratic governance in Africa is often plagued by delays due to parliamentary debates, opposition roadblocks, and legal battles. Traoré's military rule allows for quick decision-making without prolonged political negotiations. This has been evident in his swift restructuring of state institutions, removal of foreign influence, and prioritization of national interests without external interference. Many African democracies, on the other hand, face instability due to election-related conflicts, judicial corruption, and endless political disputes. Countries like South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya have witnessed governance delays due to prolonged legal battles over election results or parliamentary disagreements that stall policy implementation. A common criticism of African democracies is the high level of corruption among elected officials. Many democratic governments are plagued by nepotism, embezzlement, and mismanagement of public funds. Traoré's government, being military-led, has placed emphasis on reducing external economic dependence and taking control of Burkina Faso's natural resources, particularly gold mining. He has pushed for nationalizing key industries and reducing the role of foreign corporations that previously benefited from weak governance structures. In contrast, democratic governments in Africa often suffer from political patronage, where ruling parties allocate resources based on loyalty rather than national interest. Countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, and again Nigeria, despite being democratic, continue to suffer from widespread corruption and misallocation of natural wealth. Burkina Faso, under Traoré, has distanced itself from France, a former colonial power, and sought alliances with non-Western partners such as Russia. This move has been perceived as a way to assert national sovereignty and reduce dependence on foreign aid, which often comes with political conditions. His government has also expelled Western diplomats and military personnel accused of interfering in national affairs. Many African democracies, however, still rely heavily on Western financial institutions, which impose economic policies that may not always be in the best interest of local populations. Countries like Ghana, Kenya, and Zambia struggle with debt crises due to loans from institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, which often dictate national economic policies. While Ibrahim Traoré's government has demonstrated strengths in areas where some democratic governments have failed, it also exhibits flaws inherent to military rule. His administration has faced accusations of restricting press freedom, suppressed political opposition, and ruling by decree. Additionally, the sustainability of military rule remains a significant concern, as history has shown that military leaders often consolidate power and become increasingly authoritarian over time. However, many African democracies are not entirely free from these same authoritarian tendencies. Although democratic governance is meant to promote political participation, accountability, and civil liberties, in many African nations, these rights are often monopolized by ruling parties. Political freedoms, in practice, tend to be enjoyed primarily by members of the dominant party, restricting the broader democratic value of inclusive participation. More concerning is the lack of transparency in many African democracies, where governments frequently deny citizens their civil liberties and suppress efforts to question state actions. This erosion of democratic principles has led to growing disillusionment among the people, who see little difference between the repressive tendencies of military and civilian rule. The challenge for African democracies, therefore, is to reform their institutions, eliminate corruption, and improve governance efficiency to counter the growing perception that military rule offers a more effective alternative. Traoré's leadership has showcased advantages in security, swift decision-making, resource management, accountability, and reducing foreign dependency, factors that resonate strongly with populations disillusioned by democratic failures. In the eyes of many Africans who feel neglected by their democratic governments, Traoré's successes appear to validate military rule as a viable governance model. This sentiment is fueling increasing calls for leaders like Traoré to replace failing democratic regimes. To prevent further democratic backsliding, African governments must urgently address governance deficiencies, especially corruption and its borderless consequences. They must ensure that democracy truly serves the interests of all citizens rather than a select political elite. Diaspoint values your perspective and encourages you to share your thoughts on the topics we present. Feel free to comment and share with your network to spark broader discussions.